I've been around here, and you really don't think that's ever going to happen around here. You feel safe around the community and on campus, and then not even a mile from here, just short north, and you hear that, it's kind of shocking.
Today's case will cover the life and death of 21-year-old Reagan Tokes. Reagan Delaney Tokes was born on March 13, 1995 in Edgewood, Kentucky, to parents Toby and Lisa McCrary Tokes. They raised Reagan and later her younger sister Mackenzie in Maumee, Ohio. Reagan attended and graduated from Anthony Wayne High School with a 4.5 GPA and was a star player in varsity tennis and lacrosse. Not long after Reagan's graduation, her parents and sister moved out to Florida in 2013, but Reagan stayed and attended Ohio State University. This was her dream college since she was 8 years old, and the only college she was known to have applied to. While at OSU, she was initially accepted as a pre-med major, but later switched to psychology. Family and friends described Reagan to be extremely compassionate and wouldn't hesitate to put others before herself. She also loved animals, especially her Shih Tzu named Ellie. In 2017, she was going to graduate from OSU and had her new sights set on working at the Cleveland Clinic and eventually opening her own psychiatric practice to help those who suffer from addiction, mental health issues, and other psychological hardships. She shared plans of applying to graduate school to inch closer towards her dream. In the meantime, she lived in an off-campus apartment with 3 of her campus friends and held a part-time job at Bodega, which was a restaurant near the German village of Columbus. On the night of February 8th, 2017, Reagan would finish her shift at Bodega. At around 9:45 p.m., the restaurant security footage would show Reagan leaving the restaurant and heading to her car. This would be the last night that she would be seen. The following morning, her friend and roommate Kristen would walk by Reagan's room to find it empty. This startled Kristen because the two were supposed to walk to class together. However, she figured that maybe Kristen woke up early and went to the library as it was midterms week and they had plenty of work to do. But to their dismay, they would not see or hear anything from Reagan, and they knew something was wrong by mid-afternoon. Reagan was a person that had no enemies, nor was she involved in criminal activities, so initially, her friends thought she could have gone out of town, and her phone died so she couldn't notify anybody of her whereabouts. Her parents worried that she could have been in a car accident. Once they retraced Reagan's steps to Bodega where they last remembered she was, the manager then filed a missing person report, but nobody could have prepared them for what actually took place. In the few weeks leading up to February 8th, there was news of an unidentified man who had been terrorizing women in German Village around where the Bodega restaurant was, and the attacks were slowly escalating. In the first incident, the victim described a tall man with a hoodie who severely beat her and ran off before he could be detained. A few days later, the attacker used a knife to threaten the next victim. He held it to her neck and told her he was going to kill her, but he stole her purse and took off. 3 more similar attacks would take place, and on the 7th of February, just a day before Reagan disappeared, the attacker used a gun. He would approach the victim the same way he did the others, where he approached her from behind and threatened to kill her, but he struggled with her for a bit before beating her with the butt of the gun to the side of her face, knocking her to the ground and cracking a few of her teeth. He then ran off with her bag. On the 8th of February, the same assailant spent his evening roaming the streets of Columbus looking for his next victim. GPS data would show that he walked around OSU's campus before traveling downtown and spending an hour walking in circles near Bodega. When Reagan would leave her shift from the restaurant that night, she had no idea that she would walk right into the attacker's path. At some point, Reagan traveled to her car where she would run into the attacker who forced her into her car at gunpoint. He told her that all he wanted was money and that everything would be all right. Around 10:02 p.m., he forced Reagan to stop at Chase Bank to withdraw $500, but the attempt was declined. At 10:14 p.m., security footage at Huntington Bank showed Reagan trying to withdraw money again, but it did not go through. From 10:18 to 10:30, they stopped in an alleyway. This is where the attacker is believed to have sexually assaulted Reagan. From there, they returned to the first bank where Reagan was seen withdrawing $60. They would then stop at 2 gas station locations from 10:30 to 12 a.m. Sometime between 12 and 1 a.m., the attacker would force Reagan to drive to Scioto Grove Metro Park in Grove City, Ohio. He forced Reagan to remove all of her clothes, get out of the car, and walk until he told her to stop. He later admitted that she begged for her life, with her last words being, "All I want to do is live." To prevent her from reporting the crimes he had committed against her, he shot her once in the back of the head and a second time on the left side of her face. He then took off in her vehicle. A local driver discovered her body a few hours later and called the police. Once the police received the missing persons report from Reagan's coworker, they connected the dots and determined that the body that had been reported in Grove City could have belonged to the missing OSU student. Once Reagan's uncle came in to positively identify her body, the police began investigating who could be responsible. A few days before her death, Reagan had broken up with her college boyfriend because they both needed to focus on their schoolwork. When a young woman is killed, a significant other is almost always the first suspect. To investigators, a breakup, even if it was mutual, could be a stressor or the event that caused the person to commit the crime. However, her ex-boyfriend had a rock-solid alibi, and Reagan's friends immediately defended him, claiming that he couldn't be responsible. Though he shared a suspicious post on Instagram claiming that she, meaning Reagan, was in a better place while she was still missing and the body in the morgue remained unidentified, police determined that this was harmless. Reagan's silver Acura was still missing, up until the day after she was found, where a garbage truck miraculously captured the image of the front license plate of Reagan's car. As soon as investigators got a hold of her car, they seized it and found a plethora of evidence that could possibly lead them to the attacker, including cigarette butts and a gas can that the attacker used while trying to set the car on fire. Within hours, investigators learned that a similar gas can was purchased at a nearby Speedway gas station on the night Reagan was last seen at 12:18 a.m. They saw surveillance video of the man and kept the photograph of the person. Still, they had no leading suspects until the DNA test returned from the cigarettes and semen recovered from Reagan's body had a hit. It matched Brian Lee Golsby, the same exact man seen in the surveillance from the gas station. 28-year-old Brian Lee Golsby is no stranger to the justice system. Born in 1988, he said that he had an abusive teenage mother and was affected by drug and alcohol abuse. He also claimed that he was removed from his home 4 times and placed into foster care before he was 14. Brian alleged to have been sexually assaulted by a neighbor at the age of 12, but prosecutors would later dispute this as his stories were inconsistent. He began committing crimes as a juvenile, including theft, shoplifting, and even threatening his mother with a knife. The Ohio Youth Department has also reported Golsby for sexually assaulting numerous 5- and 6-year-old boys and girls. Golsby would graduate to a new level of depravity in November of 2010. Golsby held a pregnant mother by knife point with her 2-year-old son in the parking lot of her apartment complex. He then sexually assaulted her while she covered her child's eyes, then forced her to drive to an ATM to withdraw money, and then forced her to take him to her apartment, where he'd sexually assault the victim again before taking her newly bought DVD player and leaving. Fearing for her and her children's lives, the victim refused to testify, so Golsby pleaded down to robbery and attempted rape in May 2011 and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. He was released in November of 2016 as the court counted the 6 months he spent in jail prior to his plea bargain. This was just 3 months before he encountered Reagan Tokes. Upon his release, Golsby was registered as a Tier 3 sex offender and was given a GPS tracking device called Alvis. Alvis did not monitor him, and in fact, he could not be placed in the reentry program due to his criminal history and violence while in prison. He was then placed in a temporary housing center under the Exit program, where the officials also did not monitor him and allowed Golsby to come and go as he wanted and did not check his whereabouts. Golsby's probation officer was not monitoring him either, which allowed him to violate probation several times, including the robberies and assaults leading up to Reagan Tokes' murder. Golsby was arrested on February 11, 2017, at 4 a.m. by SWAT officers, just 3 days after Reagan's murder. Once detained, detectives interrogated him, to which he confessed to forcing Reagan to withdraw money from ATMs and taking her to the park. He claimed that at the park, he ordered her to get out of the car and undress, and left her there alive, but he denied ever having a gun or sexually assaulting her. It was at this point where detectives devised a new strategy where they suggested to Golsby that he had to have an accomplice. Golsby then made up a new story that included a man by the name of TJ, who demanded money from him and threatened to harm his children if he did not give him money. This man TJ now forced Golsby to sexually assault Reagan at gunpoint.
Just rather call the cops, for real. I could have, but at the same time, I didn't want to promote somebody jeopardy.
He also said that TJ forced Reagan out of the car and to undress, and then shot her in the head.
She was, because his son, he gets behind me. At first I heard it click, nothing happened, so I'm thinking the gun that he gave me was fake. She falls. She lays on the ground. I'm looking on the car, and he's been down, shoots her again.
The detectives already knew that all of this new information and blame placed on this TJ guy was one big lie. However, they pretended to believe him, causing him to lead them to more evidence. Golsby was charged with 9 counts, including aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, and rape. During his trial, his ex-girlfriend testified that she and Golsby went to McDonald's at 1:45 a.m., right after he murdered Reagan Tokes, and he gave her a black Kate Spade purse and a white wallet as a gift, and she later learned they both belonged to Reagan. On March 13, 2018, Golsby was convicted on all counts on the day Reagan would have turned 23. However, when it came to determining his penalty, the jurors could not agree. 4 voted for life in prison, and 8 voted for the death penalty.
Today I would like to apologize to the Tokes family.
Ultimately, the judge sentenced Golsby to life in prison without parole. Brian Golsby is currently serving 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole at the Ohio State Penitentiary. Reagan's funeral took place on February 15, 2017, and her remains are buried in her hometown of Maumee, Ohio. After her death, Reagan's parents and sister accepted a posthumous degree from OSU on her behalf. There are also 2 memorials for Reagan, one at her university and one at Scioto Grove Metro Park. The Tokes family also launched the Reagan Delaney Tokes Memorial Foundation, which aims to help students go to college, teach self-defense, and reduce overall crime through legislation. In 2018, the Reagan Tokes Act was introduced in the Ohio House and Senate, which included giving judges more discretion in sentencing violent felons and required that geographic boundaries be set for offenders with GPS monitors. In December, part of the act was signed into law by Governor John Kasich. Today, the family continues awarding scholarships to high schoolers in Reagan's memory and honor, while still working towards legislative change on the other half of the Reagan Tokes Act. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned.